Hello there. Today is Tuesday. I probably should have checked that before I started, eh? Today I want to talk to you about accounting apps. So a lot of small business owners ask me that question, like, what is the best way for me to keep track of my accounting? That's really the question that you want to answer, because which app you have, or if you're using Excel or whatever, that's not. It's really about having a process that works for you and having an app or Excel that fits into that process so that your life is easy when you're doing your bookkeeping. Because if it's not easy, it's probably not going to get done. Something that I've learned in my life, if it's not something that I want to be doing and it's hard and I don't see an impact right away, it's hard to get motivated to actually do that thing. So having a good bookkeeping app in your process is really important. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, how much manual effort do I want to put into this process? So if you're like, I want it to be totally hands off, I want nothing to do with this process or as little as possible to do with this process, then something like an Excel spreadsheet is probably not your best option, because that is the most manual that you can get. So if you're looking for something that's very hands off, then you probably want to be looking at an app like QuickBooks or like Xero, because they will integrate with other applications to allow you to automate that flow right from taking a picture of your receipt all the way to getting it into QuickBooks. If, however, you're like, I don't really have that many transactions, like maybe I spend money on a couple things every month, I'm fine to just enter them into a spreadsheet. Then maybe that's your best option. If you really only have probably less than 10 transactions a month, I would say. By transactions, what I mean is the lines on your bank statement and your credit card. So anytime that you spend money or you bring money into the company, that counts as a transaction. So if you have less than 10 in a month, then Excel is probably a fine option if you're willing to do that. So let's talk about apps, not just Excel. We'll move on to apps. So you know that I am a fan of QuickBooks. That's the one that I use. And I try to get everybody onto QuickBooks. If I take on a new client, and they're not using QuickBooks, then I will move them to QuickBooks. And the reason that I do that is because I feel that QuickBooks has the best interface for people who are not accountants. So there are apps out there that are built for accountants, things like Simply Accounting. I think they go by Sage now, but that app is built for accountants, and it's difficult to navigate and to understand what the process is supposed to be in an app like that, because it's not intuitive. QuickBooks was built for people who don't know accounting. And so I lean that way for that reason. I mean, it's also a great app. It does all the things that needs to happen, and it integrates with a lot of other apps like the receipt management that I was talking about to really automate that workflow. So that one is my favorite. There are other ones though. Xero is one. I mentioned that one earlier. Xero, I don't love Xero, so it's going to be a biased review of Xero. I don't find that the layout is very well thought out or well organized, but it does handle currency conversion a lot better than QuickBooks. So if you're somebody that's working in a bunch of different currencies, then maybe Xero is a good bet for you. It definitely doesn't have the same integrations that QuickBooks has, like in terms of third-party apps, because it's just not as popular. And I don't know if they have an open API. I don't know about that. But it's a fine app. I have one client now who's still on Xero, and last year I had a client on Xero who we actually switched to QuickBooks because they had other factors. But it's a fine app if you are in search of something that is not QuickBooks, then maybe check out Xero. The one thing that I don't love is that it doesn't handle Canadian sales tax very well. The reporting is really not very good for creating sales tax returns. That's the one major issue that I have with Xero. And the third major one out there is Wave, and Wave is free, which means that it gets a lot of people who don't want to be using Excel but don't want to pay for it either. And Wave has its place in the market for sure. And it's good for people who are just starting out, who don't want to be in Excel, and who are really just getting their feet wet with an accounting software, and your business isn't going to grow that much. Because the problem with Wave is that it's very slow, for one. It doesn't have any integrations with third-party apps. So if you want to be bringing in digital copies of receipts, it has its own receipts function, but it's not great. And it's just a bit clunky to use. Like, there's a reason that it's free. It does allow you to take credit card payments like QuickBooks and I assume Xero as well. And it does recurring credit card payments. So if you had a subscription with somebody and you wanted to charge them the same amount every month, then it would do that for you. I don't love the idea of being on Wave if you expect your business to grow, because it's not scalable. You're gonna outgrow Wave if your company gets to a certain point. And I don't mean like an enormous company. My company, for example, I wasn't in Wave, but it would be too big to run in Wave. I only have 2 part-time bookkeepers, a part-time assistant, and a part-time accountant working for me. So not a huge company, but it's like I wouldn't be able to work in Wave. The Wave limit, I guess you could say, is really based on the complexity of your organization and less on the dollar value. So you could be doing $1 million and using Wave, but if you're doing $1 million in $10 transactions, your company's probably way too complex to be in Wave. Not probably, it's definitely way too complex to be in Wave. But if you're doing $1 million, but you're doing like, I don't know, $100,000 transactions or something like that, then that's a different story. Of course, if you're doing $1 million, you can probably just pay for QuickBooks, but that's neither here nor there. If your company is going to grow and the potential to outgrow Wave is there, I don't love starting there because you're going to have to switch at some point. And usually that point comes at the least opportune time because you're super busy. You have to learn this new system. It's going to be a new workflow, even if it's similar to the old one. And so I just don't love starting in Wave if you plan to outgrow it. I think you're better off starting in the smallest package of something like Xero or QuickBooks and just growing into that software and bumping up your package as your company gets bigger or you need more features. Because QuickBooks is really not that expensive, really. I think the largest package that you can get from them is $50 a month, which for a system that's keeping your financial information and allowing you to run reports, that's really not a lot. I know it feels like a lot when you're a small business, but I think you can get started with QuickBooks for under like $10 a month, and Xero is going to be comparable as well. I'm sure there are other ones out there, but those are the 2 main ones. If you have any questions about accounting apps or how to choose one for your business, definitely leave your questions for me in the comments and I'm happy to answer those. You can also get a free copy of the PDF that I created called 7 Accounting Mistakes Small Business Owners Make and Quick Fixes to Stay Out of Trouble. Choosing an accounting app is one of those mistakes, so you're already ahead of the game. You only have to read 6 more. I hope you're doing well and I'll see you tomorrow.